do a lot for our students. We do a lot to really try to create the right environment for our students. But we also want to do something for the parents to help you become more knowledgeable as well. So that's where the idea of the parent seminar is kind of hatched out of it. But tonight we're about Dr. Nathan Goodyear, and I'll go ahead and just read part of his introduction. He is the founder, co-owner, and lead physician at Sessions Wellness in Berry, Tennessee. His passion for wellness began with his own 100-pound post-football career weight loss. Dr. Goodyear has served as a consultant, educator, and trainer for Diagnostics Inc. in Kent, Washington. Dr. Goodyear's first book, Man Group Nation, an integrative model of low testosterone, looks at the causes of low testosterone and the physiologic consequences of low testosterone in men. Dr. Goodyear's first book is an extensive review of scientific literature on low testosterone as the effect and not the cause. No opinion, just science. Dr. Goodyear speaks regularly across the nation on the topic of wellness medicine. Dr. Goodyear seeks to help his clients break free from the disease model of medicine through wellness living. A wellness model of medicine is the only way to prevent disease and promote healthy living. A wellness or disease lifestyle begins at the youngest of ages. The foundation of a wellness or disease lifestyle begins with the foundation of nutrition or a lack of nutrition. Dr. Goodyear has used this nutrition and wellness lifestyle foundation to treat ADD, ADHD, and a variety of developmental problems in children. And with that, I'll step off the stage and give it to Dr. Goodyear.
I wanted to keep this pretty informal. So, as I go back to training my classes, I've been taking these off and doing all this kind of stuff because I'm adjusting to this mid-age thing. But I normally have slides, but I wanted to keep it informal because slides kind of make people feel a little, unconnected and they don't want to ask questions. So, I just wanted to kind of walk around and just give you all a chance to say, well, question about what you're talking about. Because what I wanted to do was do this in two parts. I want to see if I can just read this. I want to talk about what is wellness. Because wellness means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Wellness can mean a lady comes in my office, she's 49, she has hot flashes, and she wants those gone. It can be a man that comes in, he's having a midlife crisis. And he's having all the issues that really men struggle with, one of which I deal with in my book. It can be somebody that has a disease and they want to treat the disease. And it can be somebody that has a disease and they want the resolution of the disease. So wellness, it means a lot of things to a lot of different people. Now, the way I got into this wellness journey was actually is a God thing because he brought us here. We wanted to stay here. I did my training here. But he allowed me to meet and interact with people who God planted seeds. We wanted to stay. We were here in this church. And God closed the door and we left. I wouldn't practice medicine the way I practice now if I had left. Excuse me if I had stayed. So when I left, I'm an OBGYN by training. That's my training. I'm board certified. And so a lot of people go, how do you treat men? Well, they're a lot easier to treat than the ladies. They're just non-compliant. Okay, so they have their different set of issues. If I can get men to stay on board, they're going to do really well. Kids the same way because they're healthy, they're young. Age and its dysfunction has not had a chance to kick in yet. Okay? But as I progressed through my first job in a group, what I discovered is that as I was treating these women that would come in the office, I was doing the same thing. They would all get put on birth control pills. They would then all end up with an ablation, then a hysterectomy, then an antidepressant, then hormone replacement therapy. Then I'm going to send you to the psychiatrist, the psychologist, because there's nothing else I can do for you. So basically at that point, I started to had to reassess what I was doing and think, well, is what I'm doing maybe not treating everybody uniquely? Or is there this mass conspiracy by these clients against me? Well, obviously it was not the former, it was the latter. It was the former. So that's how I started this journey. And I started the journey in functional medicine with treating the ladies. That then progressed to treating men, and then that progressed to treating the children. So that's kind of been the progress of about the last 9 to 10 years through this process. And the process basically is following the science. That's what we do. And so what is functional medicine? Well, first let's talk about what is disease medicine. Disease medicine is something that I'm not against. A lot of people think that when you're in functional medicine or you're in wellness medicine, you're against disease medicine. Disease medicine is your classical, traditional medical health care. You break a hip, you need to go into the ER, you need a surgeon to help you. Okay? That's what disease is. It is identify the disease and manage it and stabilize it. What functional medicine is, functional medicine came about sometime early in the 1970s and then really kicked off in the early 1990s. And what functional medicine came about it came about because there was frustration by the physicians in treating chronic disease. They noticed, as did the CDC, that chronic diseases of aging, cancer, cardiovascular disease, etc., were skyrocketing. Yet, the number of needs we had to treat these things was increasing as well. So we weren't doing enough to be proactive and preventative in treating these disease states. And so that's kind of one of the things that really spurred out this movement in functional medicine. And functional medicine is using natural means, therapeutically, to work with individual biochemistry to induce a healing effect. Now, that then takes to me the difference between disease and healing. To know what one says, one has to know what one means. There's a lot of issues out there as it relates to words. A lot of words, the meaning gets stolen. And the reason it gets stolen is because people don't understand the meaning, the history behind the words. You hear John talk a lot about that in church. You heard Doug talk about that years before, about the Hebrew words, what they meant. You have to put them in context, because that really provides the deeper understanding and meaning of the words. But disease really comes from two words. It's dis and ease. That's French origin, and it basically means lack of ease. So it implies that disease is the harder road. That health is the easier road, because its English translation is lack of ease. So disease should be very, very difficult. Yet, the number of disease states that we see today, other than maybe a few instances of cancer, we see them skyrocketing. Because we're not treating them like root causes of the problem, which is at the heart of what functional medicine is. But wellness is really interesting. I'm going to get up from here, because I want to get this right. Not saying that I didn't get the other things right, just a little bit more involved. So now wellness is defined as the state of being in good health. That's by Webster. Thank you, Liz. But looking at the root words, it's Germanic and Old English. Okay, that's where current definition resources will go back to the root word. And they say that well is defined as the will or willingness. Now that's interesting. And then this is state of. So when you look at that definition of wellness, what you're seeing willingness to live in a state of good health, free from illness. So I find it very interesting that wellness, its root word origin means you got to have the will, the willingness. It's kind of like Jesus at the well with the Samaritan woman. He said, hey, you want the will? Go get your family, bring them here. So I find it very interesting that there's a lot of biblical context in this. Because when you look at wellness medicine, there's a lot of hijacking, just like we mean, by New Age, by Buddhism, a lot of different things that are out there. But for me, wellness medicine is really giving credit to our Creator. It's basically looking at our biochemistry. It's looking at our physiology. And it's seeing God having His signature all over and saying, I'm here. I am here. And so for me, my calling has been to to return healthcare back to giving credit to the Creator. That's what God's called me to do. John talks about the 7 spheres. One of the things that I do is I want to heal patients. God does that. Number 2, I want to help physicians. I want to grow the number of physicians that work in this wellness movement. So that's just a little aside. But the root word of health is heal. So we gotta define or break open this definition a little bit more. The Germanic origin of the word heal is heilion, H-E-I-L-E-N, and it's translated whole. Now what's really interesting when you look at that is the Hebrew word is Rapha. Rapha means wholeness, to make whole, to restore, to normalize, to cure, to repair. The particle Rapha is translated as one who heals. So when you look at the Hebrew meaning of the word physician, it should be no surprise that the word is to heal or heal. So really, why I practice this way is because I've made many mistakes. And it forced me to go back to say, well, what am I supposed to do as a believer, as a physician? And it forced me to go back to these root words and go, oh my goodness, I've got to work to heal. My focus has been on all wrong. Now, it's not that managing disease is wrong, but I can't help somebody with a broken hip with vitamin D. But you can stabilize the vitamin D. And then I can stabilize the hip through surgery and through traditional medicine, and then I can add vitamin D for the lung to promote adequate healing, calcium absorption, and bone growth. So the two go together. So it's not that one contradicts the other. They're really working together. So let's take that and then translate that into wellness. Because disease is basically managing disease. It's a name, and I don't like to identify things by name. Functional medicine is using natural means therapeutically to treat disease. Wellness medicine is basically maintaining wellness. So it's really a paradigm of taking somebody that's in disease and transforming them to a state of wellness. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people that we see, whether they're ladies, whether they're men, or whether they're children, they're in a state of disease or a state of extreme dysfunction. I like it when people come and see us and they're doing well and they have some minor issues, because the means to help them is very easy. They're already well. We just need to maintain that more than go in and have to divert and cause significant change. So that's the difference between the three. There's disease medicine, which is identification of the disease, and it's just management. The second is functional medicine, which is using natural means therapeutically. Now, what's that mean? That means basically using natural things God-given as medicine therapeutically. Dosing is critical. A lot of people come and see us and they're on the right track. They've been doing a lot of good reading. They have good knowledge. But their dosing is not right because they're concerned about the dosing and those kind of things. These medicines, these hormones, these nutritional states, these vitamins, these amino acids, these herbs, they're powerful. Look up turmeric in the treatment of cancer. You're going to find hundreds and hundreds of studies on that herb in the treatment of cancer. So, but you got to do something. You got to take 8 grams of curcumin a day. You cannot tolerate 8 grams a day cooking with it. It is pill after pill after pill after pill after pill. So when you use these, you just have to dose them. And they're powerful. So we use those in conjunction with traditional medical therapies to aid, benefit, and reduce side effects. But wellness allows us to lower that dosage. It allows us to say, well, we're not treating the disease, and so I don't need 8 grams of curcumin. I can take a smaller dose and help them because they don't have a break. They don't have disease, which is not easy. Okay? So that's the difference between the 3 states of disease, functional medicine, and wellness medicine. Our business model is we want to be 80-20. We want to be 80% wellness and 20% functional medicine. Now, we're not even close to that, but that's a goal we want. And that comes through education. Now, a lot of people say, well, are you a proponent of, people dictating to schools and people how to eat, how to live? The answer is definitively not. No one has ever basically done anything long-term being told what to do. The way to help somebody achieve knowledge, wellness, and health is to empower them through knowledge, educate them. Then they come to the knowledge on their own, and they bought in, they've invested in it, into their own health, and they're gonna move forward with it. So that's the way I like to do it, is I like to educate physicians, I like to educate our clients, because that's the means to their long-term success. So let's talk about kids. What I wanted to do, I don't like to really talk about things as it relates to disease names. ADD, ADHD. I like to focus on symptoms, because when you label somebody with a disease, you're defining them. Many people that I see that are diabetics, when I talk to them about diabetes, I ask them a question. I say, do you think that you will always be a diabetic? They say yes. I say no. You have extreme glucose dysregulation. Now, there are some people that think they're broken, and they'll always be diabetic. The schizophrenic comes in, okay? There's probably something really, really wrong. But you will be surprised at how people can be healed with small, maybe direct therapies. So I like to focus on the symptoms because I don't want to define the patient. The definition doesn't really help them either. If a client comes in, they say, Dr. Goodyear, I hurt, I don't sleep well, and I'm tired. And I say, congratulations, you have fibromyalgia. All I did was just tell you the same thing, basically, in Latin. Okay, it's a name. It does categorize, it does help to say, okay, how do we treat them? But from a physician standpoint, going back to the root word of Raphael, it doesn't do anything to help me help that person be whole. Why do they hurt? Why do they have energy problems? Why do they not sleep? And so that is what we do. So let's talk about it in the way we develop wellness plans. We develop wellness plans using 5 points because we want to create action points. And I'll do this as it relates to children. The first one is nutrition. The second one is exercise. The third is inflammation. The fourth point is hormones. That's the third point. The fourth point is inflammation. And then the fifth point is detoxification. So let's start with nutrition, because it all starts with nutrition. In fact, I'd probably say the vast majority of our visit times of discussion with our clients is in and around nutrition, because nutrition is basically its language. That old saying, you junk in, junk out. You put in a bunch of Twinkies and Ding Dongs, what do you expect to get out? That's all you're going to get out. So it all starts with nutrition. Now, as it relates to nutrition for children, in the whole, up until about a year ago, I had the best eyesight you've ever seen. Now it's I can't see anything in front of me. Sugar. Now, sugars are carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are macronutrients. Proteins are macronutrients. Fats are macronutrients. So carbs in and of themselves are not bad. But simple sugars are bad. Artificial sweeteners are bad. High fructose corn syrup is bad. These are the sugars that I'm referencing. Okay? Now, yeah. Oh, sorry. Awesome. Did you have a question? Okay. So, but let's look at some data, because I'm a data junkie. Because I walk a different path, I have to have data and then some to back up what I do. Because a lot of people don't hear what we tell them. And so the data has to be good, it has to be strong, it has to be reproducible. It has to be in humans, not animals. Okay? That's really important. You can show a lot of stuff in animals and it doesn't do a thing in people. In 1822, anybody have any idea what the average sugar intake was? Any guess? 6.3 pounds. 1900, the average intake per year, 40 pounds. 1999, these are CDC numbers now. The average intake, so basically 2000, 107.7 pounds per person per year. The most recent estimates, 2010, are 156 pounds per person per year. This is the amount of sugar we're taking in. That's not all simple sugar. It's carbs and other things. But the point is, we are feeding ourselves massive amounts of sugar. So somebody said, well, Mike, what this look like in a dietary intake? Because you can talk about 156 pounds of sugar and go, wow, context, what's that mean? Well, here's what it might look like for 100 pounds. 100 pounds of sugar, 55 pounds of fats and oils, 300 cans or bottles of soda, 80 quarts of ice cream, 18 pounds of candy, 5 pounds of potato chips, 2 pounds of other snack chips, 63 dozen donuts. Let me tell you what, they would love us down at the local Dunkin' Donuts and other donut places. And then 70 pounds of cookies and cakes. So that's just a context of what kind of massive amounts of sugar we're talking about. Why is that important? And how does that relate to an environment that promotes healthy development in children? Well, the obvious is that sugar is an empty calorie. There's really no health benefits to simple sugars. So what will happen is kids will eat sugar. It'll give them a very quick high, but it doesn't really provide a lot of nutritional value. And so they'll seek other medicine, other foods. So you're going to end up eating excessive calories with sugar than you will with basically your non-sugars. And with obesity being our biggest healthcare issue today. Notice I didn't say crisis, I didn't say epidemic, because those are all fear-mongering words. It is our biggest problem. If we're feeding it with sugar, with empty calories, we're increasing our calorie intake because of the empty calories of sugar. The number one health issue facing America today, as I said, obesity. 34.9% of adults are currently obese. This is 2010 numbers. It's estimated that 67% of Americans, 69% of American adults are either overweight or obese. That this talk is about children. So we got to look to our children for our future. 12.1% of children ages 2 to 5 are obese. Think about that. That is a big, big number. 18% of children ages 6 to 11 are obese. 12 to 19, 21% of children are obese. And then it's estimated that over 33% of children and adolescents are either overweight or obese. So why is that important? And how does that affect development? Well, fat is not inert. It's biologically active. It produces hormones. It produces inflammation. How do you feel when you have inflammation? You had the flu, you don't have a fever, you recover, but still for about a week or two you don't feel good. Brain doesn't work good, it's slow, sluggish. That's the effect of excess weight on your brain. We know that fat communicates with your brain. We know that. It does that through hormones. Fat produces hormones. Everybody thinks it's ovaries and gonads. But fat produces hormones. It reaches back to the brain and says, hey, would you stop eating so much and burn me? But when you have inflammation fed through this, you basically have the brain saying, enough, I'm tired of listening to you. I'm just not going to listen anymore. And it does. It quiets down. You keep eating despite being in an energy positive state. So sugar feeds diabetes. It also feeds addiction. Sugar interacts in the same areas of the brain as does cocaine and heroin. They did a really neat study where they took mice and they fed them heroin. These mice loved heroin. They were addicted to it. They did that for 3 months. Then they said, all right, let's now put in their little experimental area, sugar and heroin. Any ideas which one they chose? Sugar. They wouldn't touch the heroin. Day after day after day, they went to the sugar and not the heroin. They've done PET scans, which are the scans a lot of times you see people get their bowel cancer. And what they found is that sugar highlights the same areas in the PET scans as does cocaine, heroin, and other forms of addiction. And it actually ends up doing the same thing, which is given time, it's going to deplete dopamine. Dopamine is a big focus neurotransmitter. It's huge on focus and attention. So is acetylcholine. So is phenylethylamine. These amino acids are about focus. Notice I said amino acids. If you don't take enough protein, you don't make amino acids. But sugar will cause downregulation of dopamine. And it's going to basically increase dependence and addiction, just as if heroin and cocaine would. And in fact, with that mice study, I showed you that in terms of an animal study, they found it more pleasing than they did with heroin. So actually, everybody talks about marijuana as the gateway drug. I would say it's sugar. And we started at a very young age. So sugar is a big issue because it feeds addiction, it feeds inflammation, it feeds weight gain. But when we talk specifically about development, when we talk specifically about education, when we talk specifically about children in the classroom, it also promotes high phases and down phases. Everybody knows what a child's like after they have sugar, Twinkies, ding dongs, bouncing off the walls, they're everywhere. That only lasts so long, then they're down. And we feel that as adults too. When we have a big, heavy carb lunch, and then we go back to work, 2:30, we're sitting there just like, oh, I couldn't believe we do this. Just even fall. That's coming from your crash because of insulin. You eat this high carb meal or high sugar, you get this massive influx or release of insulin because of this massive load of sugar. And basically you get this high, but then it's going to be quickly followed with a crash. And so most of the kids, in the morning and in the evening, because we have lunch, they go and have a lot of sugar. Now for about maybe 30 minutes to an hour, their focus is going to be really good, but they're going to be fidgety, they're going to be hyperactive, they're just not going to want to sit still. And then we tell them in class, early morning, early afternoon, sit still, listen, focus. Well, they just pump themselves with something that's preferred by mice more than heroin. What should we expect them to do? Focus? Stay still? No. But then, they stay still maybe an hour or two later because they're lethargic. And it's because now they're low, okay? They're dragging, they don't think well. So it has a huge impact on the daily school schedule and the child's ability to perform academically because of those highs and lows. So people say, well, then what do you feed your kids? Well, let me be honest with you. Friday night's one night? Pizza night. So we have pizza night, we have dessert every now and then. And every time I make recommendations about what we eat, the kids are like, oh, come on, Dad. But eating healthy is not hard. And it's actually fun and it actually tastes good. We have carbs. The kids have cinnamon rolls once in a while. And so we have fun. We don't want to make it something that they don't feel like they have access to. But on a daily basis, to eat Twinkies and ding dongs with lunch and donuts for breakfast, I'm setting them up to not succeed when they go well to school. But sugar is a big issue as it relates to nutrition as it relates to diet. You bet, far away.
The sugar, because you try to
parents, yes.
Because we tell them, you will hear that does.
Right. That's why I always have the parents in with me, with the children. Because, especially teenagers, teenagers, I've got two, really almost three. And if I make a recommendation, even if it's built in stone, and it's got Jesus behind it, and all of sides that he says you'll see, they're going to say, no, do something else. So, what I want to do is educate the family, the caregivers, the parents, for teenagers, but I always like to have a little bit of a private conversation with the teenagers after the parents. Because I tell them, say, look, this is on you, this is on you. Soon you'll go off to college, soon you're going to do this on your own. But with the kids younger than 12, usually, they're like, well, they told me come, I'm here because of them. So it's going to be talking to the child, but through them to the parents. Because the parents are going to be the ones that are really going to put this into practice. But this is something that really, it applies to the entire family. Okay? When I say, as I said before, obesity is the big issue that we face today. It is. It is. I mean, they're having trouble recruiting for the military because of the weight problem. And our children, we've never had more children with metabolic syndrome today than ever in history. Metabolic syndrome is basically the doorway through which disease walks. We have more children now with metabolic syndrome than we've ever seen. So we don't know what's going to happen in the future. I can tell you what's going to happen in the future. We're going to have a big medical crisis because we're going to have a lot of unhealthy people. Now, what else does sugar do? Sugar changes your gut bacteria. A lot of people have been reading about gut bacteria and how it relates to the overall health of the individual. It's estimated that there's somewhere between 2 and 9 trillion different types of bacteria in your gut. God's so cool. He's so cool. The gut populates through birth. When a child's born through a normal process, the gut sets up with a population of bacteria that has benefits versus those that have C-sections. We know this. Studies show this. The bacterial content that dominate between the two types of delivery are different. And surprise, the type of body mass is different. Now we can change that. People born that have a bacterial balance population in their gut that favors, that looks similar to a normal delivery, they tend to be thinner people. That doesn't mean they all are. They're just leaner. Those that are born via C-section, not against C-section, it's going to be. There's something needed, okay? But their population sets up different. And as a whole, they struggle with more weight issues, okay? So sugar changes the bacterial population that favors a heavier weight. You take the sugar away, the bacterial population goes back. You can actually affect a metabolic change in an individual through probiotics, through diet. They'll change the bacterial content. Artificial sweeteners will change the bacterial content and create insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is basically that condition that's pre-diabetic. Okay? So fructose just, there's not much good to say about fructose, other than when it's in fruit. High fructose corn syrup, basically, it gets converted right to fat, and it bypasses 2 key regulatory steps that glucose has. That will slow that down and store it in glycogen. But with fructose, it goes right into fat, whether it's triglycerides or whether it's in here. Okay? Triglycerides and this are the same thing. So the sugar is not just calories, it's not just weight, hormones and inflammation as a result of that, but it's also the effect it's having on your bacterial content. Now, there's a condition called metabolic endotoxemia. This is a name that describes dysfunction that really highlights the biochemistry of what functional medicine is. Normal, healthy gut bacterial balance in the gut becomes imbalance, results in inflammation. The inflammation alters the insulin receptor. The insulin receptor becomes dysfunctional. Glucose levels go up. Metabolic syndrome results. Diabetes comes. They've actually been shown how imbalanced gut bacteria in your gut will cause inflammation that causes type 2 diabetes. So everybody thinks that sugar is a diabetic issue. The vast majority of diabetes originates through gut issues. So that shows you the impact, not only that we could have in the classroom, but long term, the impact we could have on the child and the health. And that's really the responsibility that we as parents and schools have for these children. Food sensitivities, kind of a hot topic. A lot of people know about gluten. I don't need to ask people about peanut allergies. They come in and they tell me. That's the classic type 1 type of immune reaction. You eat peanuts, can't breathe. And those people come in telling me that. But there's a type 2, a type 3, and a type 4. The food sensitivities that I'm talking about here are basically the type 4. They're called delayed hypersensitivity reactions. These are huge for kids. Huge for kids, huge for adults. These are people that eat gluten, soy, eggs, or anything else. And they have delayed inflammatory responses. So they may eat cucumbers as I did for lunch. And then I noticed about 3:30, I'm sitting there with brain fog in a meeting, a little bloating, and not feeling so well. But it's a delayed response. It's not an immediate reaction. And it's not an antibody-mediated reaction. Now, how can this affect kids? There's a neurologist in New York that he's an autism expert. And he has a case, you may have seen it from Fox News several years ago. Child was diagnosed with autism. Then he goes kindergarten. Then in the second grade, he switches schools. Goes to this doctor in New York. He says, tell you what, let's cut you off gluten. No dairy. Then he goes starts second grade school and performs very well. And basically reaches a point where they call him recovered. Now, most cases are not like that. But the point is, you can see the massive change in a cognitive, physical child based on inflammation through foods. Okay? But that was primarily through a T-cell delayed hypersensitivity reaction. It's not an anaphylactic type of response, so it's a different response. But so the way these affect kids is they're going to have behavior issues. I've seen food dietary eliminations help children with aggressive behaviors. Cognitive performance in school, I've seen it help them. I've seen focus attention issues, so your classic ADD, ADHD. I've seen the identification of these foods and elimination change these people significantly, these children. So it's because of inflammation. There's just as many neurological connections around your gut as there are in your brain. So if you get inflammation in your gut, you get inflammation in your brain. We could sit here and talk about case study after case study after case study, where I've been able to treat anxiety in an adult who came in on an antidepressant, who came in on a benzodiazepine, Valium, and she had candida. Treated the candida, didn't need it anymore. Actually stopped it on her own. Not my recommendation, but she stopped. Now, people go, oh, candida, there's no science to that, right? Well, let's see, 1963, vaginal yeast infection was considered quackery. And I think every woman would laugh at that. So that kind of puts it in context. Medicine, we're slow to change. There's some good to that. There's some good to that because we need evidence. The Institute of Medicine did a study in 2001 that found that the average physician practiced at a level that was 17 years behind the current scientific knowledge. Now, why is that? I see 30 to 40 patients a day. You don't have time to read, you're tired. I did that for 2 years. I came home and didn't know who I treated, didn't know who I saw. I love my patients. I did everything good for them. I helped some people too. I want to say that I didn't, but I helped some people. But you don't have time to really learn. You have time to practice what you're told to practice. So, that's just some evidence out there about we physicians are, and it's our responsibility to be there for our clients, because those clients expect the best from us. We should expect the best of ourselves from them. Exercise. So nutrition. It all starts with nutrition, y'all. Sugar. Food issues. The four most common food sensitivities are gluten, milk, eggs, and soy. So when people are dealing with lots of issues, they think it may gut, maybe their gut, I tell them, hey, cut out gluten. Now that's a big step. We always test because usually that creates a lot of uproar in the family. But gluten is a hot topic because a lot of people try it for diet, a lot of people try it for weight loss. But I can tell you that I see the people that are thin, that I cut out gluten and they gain weight. Gluten will actually block the enzyme that converts glutamic acid to GABA. GABA is calming. Glutamic acid is your principal excitatory neurotransmitter. Brain. Excitation. Hyperactivity. You got a child that is hyperactive, can't focus, can't sit still, and they have a positive gluten test. I can almost guarantee every one of them are going to have low GABA because that's affecting that enzyme and it's not allowing you to make GABA. So what do? Cut gluten out. Take it away and see if the body doesn't take care of itself. It usually does when they're young like that. So it's usually when we're older when the dysfunction is settled out for a while. Going really gluten-free, it's hard for people that are eating a traditional American diet. So we check them, and when we check them, we verify. And so when we verify, we say, people have to do this. Mom, Dad. With gluten, it seems to take longer. It seems to take around 3 months for us really to see, okay. Because what you got to do is you got to remove the exposure, and you got to allow the immune system to go quiet. And it takes a lot longer for that than it seems than it does for other things. I mean, it seems you can cut dairy out, you can see a pretty immediate withdrawal. Okay, that's my southern drawl there. You'll see kids get shakes coming off of dairy when they've got issues with dairy. I mean, it's when you see this stuff, you're like, did you do anything else? They're like, no, you told me to cut out dairy, that's all we did, look at it. You know? So these things have powerful effects that are amazing. Gluten takes about 3 months. Most food items, I tell them 2 to 4 weeks for you really to notice a positive effect. It's not just foods, y'all. It's artificial sweeteners, it's dyes, it's all of these things that are an enormous issue. And unfortunately, it's all the junk we're putting in our environment, we're reacting to. I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second. Politics corrupts everything. The debate about toxins in the environment, it is not a political issue. It's not a right issue, it's not a left issue. It's a science issue. They're there. We have more mercury now today in the last 20 years, a 300% increase in our environmental soil samples of mercury than we had 20 years ago. Mercury is a potent neurotoxin. These things are there, they're real, and they're affecting us. So it's not a political issue. They change us. They change us before birth. They've been able to do studies on children and show that the receptors change. The hormone receptors change before they're born because of the toxins that we get exposed to. Because these toxins are hormonal. They have hormonal effects. One of the biggest toxins that people don't talk about is actually cadmium. It's a heavy metal. It's called metalloestrogen. Why is it called metalloestrogen? Well, it's a metal, and guess what it stimulates? An estrogenic response. So that's not really good for a person that maybe is overweight and already producing a lot of estrogen. And it's really not good for a young man who's 26 years old, and he's got low testosterone. I can't tell you how many young men in 19, I had one as young as 19, that have low T. Low T. That is not normal. Historically, it's not even close to normal. The generation of 1940, the men's testosterone count was basically 100-fold higher than what it was in 1998. we're changing our children. I got a little bit off track, but environmental toxins are something that I think politics really messes up. Because each side, one side says it's all about the environment, the other says the environment has nothing to do with it. But they are both wrong. They are both wrong. And again, follow the science, follow the science. But 2 to 4 weeks for most foods, gluten's longer. The big thing that people miss are the preservatives, the additives, the food dyes. I've even seen a skin topical rash from a blue dye from a school color shirt. We had to write a letter to the school to change the shirts. They were white ones, that they wouldn't have the issue. So it can be profound. Exercise. The last 3 I'll kind of breeze through because I think exercise and nutrition are the 2 that you can really impact. So no glucose or cut it way back. Food sensitivities, unfortunately, you got to check. Or you can do a classic elimination diet, which is hard. Vegetables, 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 vegetables. So okay. I'm not opposed to meat. I think meat's good. Just make sure it's free range. I don't know any free range cows, but whatever you can get that's not hormonal. We had a farm in Louisiana. We had a guy who would lease on pasture and he raised cows on it. These cows would go from birth to market in a year, and they got big and they got fat, big fast. The chickens, they would harvest the chickens in 0 to 52 days. One day I was out there in the pasture. What was his name? I couldn't find him. He was usually out there on Saturday mornings. And so I waited late that afternoon and I said, "Hey, where were you?" He said, "Well, that storm last night, the chicken houses." I said, "What happened?" "Well, when thunderstorm comes through, we usually lose about 25, 50, 75,000 chickens." I said, "Why?" So they all have heart attacks. Well, they're all unhealthy. So basically, they had to go in there. They give these chickens growth hormone, arsenic, and all this kind of stuff. Come in and give them just a little bit of stimulus with the thunderstorms in Louisiana, and pack some big ones. Just stroke them all out, heart attack them all out. So he and I had a laugh about that. He knew what he was doing, but he's like, "Look, I got to get these to market. I got to get these to market." So he understood. He understood what he was doing. So that's just a little bit of a funny story. But I'm not opposed to meat. I think meat's good. God created canines in us. It means terror. People that are vegetarians, they deal with certain vitamin deficiencies because they're not eating meat. Meat provides us resources. I like people to eat their nutrition and eat their medicine. It was Hippocrates who said, "Let food be your medicine and medicine be your food." But a lot of the people I see, it would be nice to do that, but it won't work. Now, eventually we're going to get them there, but they're just not there. So lots of vegetables, lots of greens. Be creative in your cooking with kids. Take Brussels sprouts and don't boil them, bake them. Bake them with olive oil. Instead of buying French fries, this is what I try to do. My family keeps overriding me. It's great. Take sweet potatoes, cut them up, bake them. Bake them with some basil, with some olive oil. I think it tastes better. And then you can do funny things with it. So it requires a little bit of effort. It requires a different way of thinking. But our kids are going to live better. They're going to be healthier. And you know what? They're going to perform better in school. They really will. And if they're not overweight, it's going to have a huge impact on their health if they're overweight. Let's move on to exercise. Exercise is critical because we're really seeing kids today just not getting the exercise that they used to. A lot of school systems are phasing out PE programs. It's a huge problem. Now, exercise, actually, they've done many studies that show that kids perform better academically when they exercise. So they'll actually take these kids out and say, run around the block or something like that. Now sit down and take this test. They found that kids that exercise 20 to 30 minutes before some type of cognitive task, they do better. They've took children that have ADD and ADHD, brought them into school right before school starts. They said, go do something. They had better focus, attention, and cognitive scores that first hour. So when you're dealing with kids that have focus, attention, mood, behavior, get them moving. And when I went running this afternoon, running relieves stress. I think so much better when I run. It's because it's the way God made us. I these kids that have these focus attention issues, a lot of them sedentary, they need some exercise. And I think if you even had a child who's having trouble with focus attention, I really think it wouldn't be a bad idea to say, take a break, go outside, run around, come back in, have a seat, and see how you do. Because let me tell you what, the studies are pretty strong on that. The studies are really strong on physical activity with kids and focus attention and cognitive performance. But it's bigger than that. It shows that they're going to have a positive effect into their adulthood. Children that have regular exercise or are in sports programs, they have better cognitive math skills and reading skills in high school and college. And they have better recovery too, which means if they have some type of brain injury or something like that, they're going to recover better. There seems to be better reserve there. We don't quite understand all of that, but basically you're setting up a pattern of good health in these individuals. It's not only going to impact them in the school today, it's going to impact their health in the future. But focus attention, exercise, run some more. Now, why do we think this happens? Probably there's a molecule, there's a substance, a chemical called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's in the family of what's called neurotrophins. And those of us that have been out of college for just a few years, it's amazing how far ago that was now. When I was in medical school, we were told, you go out and have a beer, you're going to lose some brain cells and you're never get it back. You go out and you have a brain injury, you never grow those cells back and die. That's not true. It's not true. We now know that's not true. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor is involved in neuroprotection and neurogenesis. It's a process called neuroplasticity, which means your brain can heal. Exercise, guess what it does to brain-derived neurotrophic factor? It increases it. It increases it. So not only does it have a quick, immediate effect, forget the calories, focus, attention, improve cognitive skills, but it promotes a neuroplastic, neuroprotective, neurogenic healing effect of the brain. And that's probably why these adults seem to have better reserve. And they seem to do better than the kids that don't. So brain-derived neurotrophic factor is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Hormones play a smaller role because a lot of the kids, we think of developmental, we think of elementary school and middle school, but hormones becoming a bigger issue because our diet. Girls are starting their cycles earlier. I mean, it used to be that precocious puberty was, 10, maybe 9. Now I'll see girls in my office with precocious puberty, 7. And it's not that we're becoming more advanced. It's not. It's our diet and it's our environment that's changing us. They create all kinds of cycle issues for women. And when these young ladies start cycles earlier, they tend to have more years with cycles, and that means higher incidence of breast cancer. So, it's not just the immediate developmental that we're talking about in school as a school age, as an elementary school or junior higher. It's what's going to happen to them at 45. Those foundational tools and steps occur before birth and early on. Low estrogen states in women are associated with low BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Conversely, in men, there's a novel concept, men and women are different. High estrogen in men is associated with low BDNF. High estrogen in men is a common cause of low T in men. Okay, so that's a big issue for men. Where do they make it? Right there. Where do women make it? After menopause, right there. Okay, so fat is very biologically active and it plays a big role in disease. Progesterone, low progesterone in women is associated with low BDNF. So women that have PCOS, they don't ovulate well, irregular cycles, they all have low progesterone. They have low BDNF, which means they have low neuroplasticity, low neuroprotection, low neurogenesis. And everybody has heard all the data about Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia. These rates are going through the roof. It starts with our kids. Starts with our kids. Low T. Low T, a little mix, but definitely when men have normal testosterone levels, BDNF levels are higher. So there's not as much evidence there. High cortisol, low BDNF, stress. That's another way to relieve stress is exercise. So that's really important. Some exercise. We need to get our kids out. We're just as guilty as the rest to come home 2 hours later. Where's James? He's upstairs, killing, ridding the world of zombies. If there's ever a zombie apocalypse, we're going to be okay. So come to our house, we're going to be fine. Everybody else, I don't know about that, but I'm pretty convinced that any middle-aged school boy, they know how to kill a zombie. But we've got to get our kids more active because they're going to perform better cognitively, they're going to have better behavior, they're going to have better healthy lives, and they're going to be better in college. They're going to have healthier adulthoods. Inflammation. This is one where we could probably have a big impact. Foods are obviously a big issue. Sugar is a big issue, so it kind of ties in there. This is where I love to talk about natural things. What were the 3 gifts that Jesus had from the wise men? Frankincense, myrrh, okay. Frankincense, boswellia. Just like I say that, boswellia. Incredibly anti-inflammatory. Incredibly anti-inflammatory. Anti-tumor, too, by the way. A little biochemistry, which I love. NF-kappa B, it's a chemical that promotes inflammation. It actually programs inflammation. So when you go, got this splinter, it's red, it hurts. Your body is signaling inflammation. NF-kappa B does that. Boswellia comes in there and says, no, shuts it down. Myrrh does the same thing. So our Creator, He knew what He was doing when He said, well, let me give them frankincense, myrrh, and gold. First of all, they were more valuable than jewels. But you have a young child that's fixing to travel. I need to give him something that's antibacterial, that's antiviral, that's anti-inflammatory, and that's anti-parasitic. Frankincense and myrrh, they fit that. And then gold, well, it's just things to travel. So those are great anti-inflammatories. Now, usually those are essential oils. I don't promote any company. Dosing with essential oils are a hard issue because we don't have studies on them. But when you look at boswellia in cancer, you got to dose that high to 7 grams. Now, there are powders and there's capsules with different companies that you can do, but the point here is inflammation. When children have inflammation, whether it's coming from their gut, or whether it's related to foods, whether it's related to diet, whatever the source of inflammation is, you can use something like frankincense and myrrh to safely reduce inflammation. Take it by mouth. Take it by mouth. Or if you have topical, if you have like a physical joint issue, I have a back issue, what do we do most nights? I put wintergreen, lavender, other oils on, in addition to other things I take by mouth. So these things are incredible anti-inflammatories. You have to dose them right, which means you can't just say, well, I'll put wintergreen on 2 times a day, and that's going to be it. You got to dose it all the time. I developed shingles in November. It was really funny. I told my wife, I said, well, I'm 44. I should have shingles. That's what's on my forehead. I said, why did I have shingles? I've been stressed. Right after Thanksgiving, she said, well, my mom just left. I love her mother. But we actually did those oils with essential oils. And I had to speak at a conference in Las Vegas in December, the first part of December. So you got to dose it right. When I was on the flight going to Las Vegas, I probably got up every 30 minutes. I think everybody thought I had a bladder problem, but I was just putting essential oils on my face because that kept me from being dysfunctional. Sure, it hurt a little bit, but I never missed a day of work. Flew out to Las Vegas, spoke, flew back, never missed anything. You have to dose it right, you have to dose it all the time. When you take it orally, you're going to get more of a systemic effect than you do when you do it topically. Okay? So, and it's very safe when you use it topically. What I would recommend with essential oils is, number one, make sure the purity, make sure they're pure, there's not wouldn't say look to the French for lunch, but look to the French for their medicinal use of essential oils. They know what they're talking about. And it's in their pharmacopoeia. And they love this stuff and they breathe this stuff. So when they use companies, allow companies to ship into their country, and don't allow other companies, take notice of that. Because they believe in this stuff. Okay? And God made it. Now whether a physician, me as a physician, believes it or not, God made it. The science is there. The science is there. Now, it may not be popular because you're just telling somebody to take essential oils, but it works. It works. Vitamin D, most people have heard about vitamin D. It's probably one of the more potent anti-inflammatories the body makes. The vast majority of the people that we see have vitamin D deficiencies. I have a lady, she's 57, fibromyalgia for 20 years. She's on chronic narcotics for fibromyalgia. She had a vitamin D of 4.7. I've never seen one that low. For 3.5 months, we've been giving her massive levels of vitamin D, and she's at 34, which is not much. So vitamin D is very, very important. It reduces inflammation directly, just like boswellia and myrrh. Vitamin D. Okay, the recommendations of the RDA are basically to say, well, what do we need to do to prevent rickets? Not a soul in here do I need to worry about rickets with. Okay? So I'm not worried about rickets. And with vitamin C, I'm not worried about scurvy. But with vitamin D, what studies tell us is that if your vitamin D is below 48, your incidence of every cancer goes up by 77%. Now, is vitamin D the cause, or is vitamin D a biomarker of poor health? There's a lot of debate about that. In those people that have disease, vitamin D helps. It's not going to fix everything at all. It's a biomarker of poor health in a lot of those people, but vitamin D reduces inflammation. Studies show vitamin D improves insulin resistance. You got a diabetic, a child is diabetic. They're not outside, they're not active. Check their vitamin D. And I would always recommend you check it before you give it. Because vitamin D is fat soluble, and you can't overload somebody. You can't overload somebody. Really hard to do that, but you can. So if they're low, it's an easy test. Take it by mouth. It's a great anti-inflammatory. The best way to get vitamin D, it's the best way to get vitamin D. You get out 20 minutes, you'll get 20,000 IUs. So that shows you can dose pretty aggressively with vitamin D, and you're not going to overload too many people. But that's an easy anti-inflammatory. So frankincense, myrrh, vitamin D, curcumin, turmeric, same thing. Omega-3s, fish oil. Everybody talks about fish oil. Omega-3 is the prevalent in fish oil. There's also some in flaxseed and some other grains. But omega-3s are anti-inflammatory, particularly your eicosanoic acid and eicosapentaenoic acid. These EPA and DHA are anti-inflammatory. They actually reduce NF-kappa B. They improve inflammation markers in people with depression, in people with cancer, in people with anxiety. There are human studies that show this. Okay? It's not animal studies. It's not something done in a petri dish. It's there. It's reproducible. It's safe. Use it. Reduces inflammation. It actually blocks. Remember I referenced fructose being converted right into fat? So there's an enzyme that does that. It's called steroid enzyme desaturase. See, I speak all this medical gobbledygook, and I do that because I hope that I encounter physicians. Not that I say omega-3 will cure you, be healed. If you have a child that has diabetes, look at these things. These are things that you can do that help, that will reduce side effects of medication, that will improve the therapies of medication. These two fields work better together. And so fish oil blocks that enzyme and keeps fructose from being converted right to fat. It blocks it. Again, there's human studies that show this. So why not do it? It's easy. So those are some really easy things. Diet, fish oil, vitamin D, boswellia, myrrh, curcumin, or turmeric. Those are all great, easy anti-inflammatories. I would always recommend that you have people check your vitamin D before you dose. I would always recommend you have your omega-3s checked before you dose. The classic American eats omega-6s at a rate of 24 to 1. The way God intended us to eat, it should be a ratio of about 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. Omega-6s are things like arachidonic acid. Arachidonic acid is a precursor to prostaglandins. What's ibuprofen? It's a prostaglandin inhibitor. So when we eat a lot of these omega-6s, which we need, but when we eat them at a ratio of 24 to 1, our diet will inflame just by our diet. So most, not all, but most of the people that we see need omega-3 in their diet, and they need to decrease their omega-6 intake. Fats are good. Saturated fats are bad. Trans fats are bad. Saturated fats of the right type are okay. We used to think that they increase cardiovascular disease, as we do in medicine. The world's flat, the world's flat. Well, something that's round. So we do that from time to time. So saturated fats are not unhealthy for some people. They don't necessarily cause or increase cardiovascular disease risk. That's the literature, and that's very recent in that change. But there have been people like Dr. Perlmutter who have been bandying that around for a long time. Again, based on research. Detoxification is the last thing. So we talk about nutrition, exercise, hormones, inflammation, detoxification. Detoxification is a hot topic too. You can go down to any, weight loss, any nutritional store, and you're going to have detox in a box. Okay, you got to be careful. Detoxification is a process which every cell must do, but your liver is your primary detox organ. Your kidneys are big, your skin's big. Detoxification is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Maybe you think the gut bacteria detox. You think? But they require minerals, they require vitamins, they require amino acids. Detoxification is basically the process saying, hey, you've got something in your body, whether you made it or whether you were exposed to it, and I need to change it and get it out. So it changes its charge, it changes its polarity. It basically tags it and says, get this out. And so when you don't have proper nutrition, so you're not eating vegetables and fruits, and you're not eating amino acids, you're not supporting detoxification. You're not supporting how the liver says, well, I got this too much estrogen over here. I need to get it out of the body. You're not allowing that process to work through proper nutrition. So nutrition impacts detoxification. But I would tell you, you can hurt somebody when you don't detoxify them right. Because you can stimulate one phase and not support the other one adequately. And they don't feel so well. And they cramp. And they don't like you. And so you always have to evaluate detoxification as it relates to each individual before you start going down that road. I never like those detoxes in the box programs. There are great men out there and women that I respect in medicine, traditional, functional, and wellness. And some of them will propose their 10-day detox programs. I think you've got to be very, very careful about that. You've got to be very, very careful about that. But detoxification really is impacted also through inflammation, oxidative stress. Anybody heard the term oxidative stress? Think of it as rust. You have a car outside. Still looks like the car that came off the assembly line. Still looks like the car. Doesn't look as good though. Doesn't work as good. That's rust. That's cellular rust. That's what oxidative stress is. Vitamin C is probably the most potent antioxidant we can give our body. We don't make it. We have to give it. It's an antioxidant. Vitamin C, fruits, even some vegetables. Or, hey, take 1,000 units. Vitamin C is safe by mouth. So, vitamin C is another antioxidant, also an anti-inflammatory. But you can really get them through good fruit. So you can see it all goes back to nutrition. Eat right. Vegetables. 6 to 8 servings a day. More than that. 10 to 12. You come home from school. Give them a handful of nuts. Bowl full of broccoli. I do these things. I come home, I fix a coconut oil. I drink it. So these things are applicable. They're not difficult. Come to my study in our kitchen. You know, I got medicinal herbs all growing all through there, Germany. So living a healthy lifestyle, it's not difficult. It's just learning to do it. Because we've been brought up living in disease that has affected our kids. We've just got to learn how to live healthy. But it requires effort, it requires retraining, it requires re-education. And it's not just an adult issue, it's a huge issue on our kids. If we don't get it under control, it's going to impact us as a country. So I hope I've been able to give you a few key points. I don't really dive deep into, I didn't want to dive deep into specific recommendations because you can have some issues with some of these things. There can be people that are sensitive to possibility. There are people that skin will break out from it. There are rare instances where people will take more vitamin C and have severe forms of anemia. It's rare, but it can happen. Okay? So it's better to eat these things or seek somebody that is knowledgeable in these areas. So, and there's lots of people out there that do that. So, hope this has been helpful. Any questions? I'd be happy to answer any questions that y'all have. So.
For kids, would you be a doctor? Would they use the conjunction of typical nutrition, or would we just kind of replace the nutrition with some?
Is it still recorded? so as to make the intervention by traditional medical doctors less necessary. And what intervention is needed is less aggressive. This style of medicine, unfortunately, cannot exist in the model of insurance. Health insurance is it's a business. They need to make money. They need to make money. And I don't have an issue with that. But they're not interested in providing coverage for this type of functional medicine and wellness. And that's just what it is. I've had conversations with CEOs of very, very, very large health insurance companies, not in this state, but in another, and showed them the problems with one of their position statements on policy. And they said, that's interesting, but we're not going to change. And my lawyer there, my business manager. So, again, they are a disease business. That's what they do. And when they're honest about it, I'm fine with that. But when they're dishonest, I'm not. They are not about wellness. They're not. They're about disease management, and that's fine. So we don't, and others like us, do not exist in the insurance model because we cannot. Yeah.
For seasonal and environmental allergies, besides local honey, what else can we do in this area?
Vitamin D, fish oil are two great ways to do it.
Okay.
Now, the literature on honey, it's not great, okay? But the problem is a lot of honey that's out there is not real honey, okay? There's a lot of things out there that are synthetic, that aren't real, because it's easier to make in mass productions. But it's probably, our thought process there is probably the bee pollen in local honey that's really providing that low-dose exposure to the immune system that causes it to go quiet. It's the same logic that we follow with allergy shots. What are you doing with the shot? You're giving them an inoculation of ragweed to show the immune system ragweed so it doesn't freak out every fall and spring when it gets exposed to it. But that's the thought process behind that. But fish oil is great for allergies. Vitamin D is great for allergies. Lavender is great for allergies. I've been using it a lot better. Well, actually, I got an IV vitamin C on Monday, so I was not doing good. So, let's see, other things that are great for allergies that are easy. Beta-glucan. Okay? 250 milligram beta-glucan. Fish oil, cod liver oil, vitamin D, vitamin C is great. Vitamins, you can never go wrong with a triad of vitamin C, fish oil, and vitamin D. Vitamin D is actually, it's great. It reduces the incidence of flu. Bilberry. There's actually studies on bilberry. It's an herb. It's a tree. It's great for flu. Great for flu. Again, it's in the literature. So, run down to your local pharmacy and say, hey, I want some fish oil, I want some vitamin D, I want some vitamin C, I want some bilberry. And let me tell you what studies say works pretty darn good when you start that early. Start that really early. So, I try to dose our family with those, especially vitamin D. Vitamin D levels drop on average 24% through the fall and winter. Why do you think we get colds and flus during those times? Our vitamin D levels drop massively. So there's some people dose higher in the fall to prep them for winter. And we do that for a lot of reasons, but we do it to prevent and boost their immune system. So I keep going back to the same things, but there's so many different things. Ginger, garlic, you got cardiovascular disease, which most kids are not, but you take 1,200 milligrams twice a day. You can't get anything better than that for your heart. It is fantastic, and there is tons of science on it. And you do smell a little bit like garlic, but it's not as bad. If you're on the road and you have a virus, you have a cold, rush down to your local market, buy you some real garlic, and eat it. Garlic is incredibly antibacterial, antiparasitic, and antiviral. It is great. Now you're going to have to eat you a few loaves, and you're probably not going to get any invites for dinner. But it does work. Y'all do this. Yeah.
Does it lose potency if you cook with it, or is it active?
Yeah. And you're going to lose some of the potency. So when somebody's sick and so they're on the road, like I did one time, you go out and it doesn't taste good. You just have to, what I did is I chopped it up small things and chewed it instead of just the whole clove. But yeah, when you cook it, you're going to break it down, you're going to get less of the beneficial effect. One real quick caveat, olive oil, great, healthy. You can cook up to medium heat, 450. You keep it below 450, you're fine with it. Olive oil is fantastic. Yeah.
Sorry, raising for me. What about krill oil? Is that the same as fish oil? That's what I was thinking.
Krill oil. Yeah, here's a little caveat. So you take capsules, freeze them. Because what that's both. Take it, freeze it. Because what that's going to allow them to, what will happen then is before it thaws, it's going to get past your stomach down into your small intestine. Then it will thaw, and you won't get as much. Okay, it's usually well tolerated. Most people don't dose enough on fish oil. The Inuit Eskimos. Studies have said they take in about 8 grams of fish oil a day. 8 grams. They smoke like chimney stacks, and they don't have heart disease. One of the reasons is the high fat content. So don't go out and eat a seal, but for people that have problems, I'm going to dose them 9,000 milligrams. Now, I'm not saying you go and do that, because it is a blood thinner. So it can thin your blood. If you're on blood thinner like Coumadin, you got to watch that. That's one of the supplements that you do absolutely need to get off before surgery. One little caveat, whether it's your children or you, before you go, make sure your doctor's aware of any supplements that you're doing, because they can be there's significant interactions with your medications, and there can be effects on what they're doing. So it's always very important to be honest. All these medications, they came from herbs anyways. So that's where they came from. Yeah.
What do you do for children who have trouble focusing, concentrating, attention?
Well, those are the 3 neurotransmitters: dopamine, phenylethylamine, and acetylcholine. There is a product called Hyperzine. Hyperzine is an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor. That's what all the medicines are for Alzheimer's too. So you can take about 50 milligrams of huperzine A, and it works great for focus. But the best is diet, nutrition. Now, when we test people, so we don't make recommendations. We're going to make recommendations based on biochemistry. A lot of these people will have low amino acid precursors. So they'll have low phenylalanine, they'll have low tyrosine. These are the amino acids that give us dopamine. Phenylalanine gives us phenylethylamine. They're both in focus and attention. So a lot of your focus attention products you can buy over the counter have a little bit of phenylalanine in it and a little bit of tyrosine in it. They're amino acids. So most people, what I recommend to them is exercise and huperzine A. They actually did a study head-to-head of huperzine A with, can't remember the name of the drug, in early Alzheimer's. They found that huperzine A worked just as well. So, and huperzine A is available over the counter. Huperzine A.
One more time.
Huperzine A. So huperzine A. Anything that reduces inflammation will improve focus. Some essential oils that improve focus, lavender. Let me tell you what, if you don't, you go, what essential oil should I get? Lavender. Lavender. It smells good too. But studies really say the best thing is to get them to go out and exercise. Really. I mean, when I'm working on a presentation or when I'm working on just anything, I'll usually close the door in my office when I'm prepping for a client I'm fixing to see, and I'll close the door and I just walk around the office with papers because that exercise helps me with focus. That's why when I talk, I can't stand talking up there because you're still. The movement, the exercise, it's about focus. So we're being really careful about making just general recommendations. But if they're trying to study, just say, dude, come on out of the house. Go. They're going to come back in, they're going to be better focused. Or go move along. Yeah. I don't. Again, I try to follow the science, not to say that there's not going to be evidence there. There's just not there right now. What I'm interested in is studies in humans that are reproducible again. And with muscle testing, it's not there. And so even though something may seem fantastic and makes sense, if I don't have evidence, I don't do it. And I do that because, again, I practice what many call alternative medicine. But I write prescriptions. Somebody comes in, they're depressed, and they're writing antidepressant because I got to give them some time while I fix the underlying problem. But because I practice what many consider alternative medicine, people watch me really closely. So I want to make sure that what I do has science. Because remember, I have two goals. One, help the client that comes to my door be well, number one. Number two, grow the number of physicians that practice this way. Because it's what's best for the patient. And I think it's biblical. And it's getting healthcare back to the way God made it. So that's, for me, that's my calling. So no, I don't. Other questions? Well, thank you all. I hope it's been informational. I kept it general for a reason, so forgive me for that. If you go to my website, if you want to find specific data, we have tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of studies that we have on our website through a social media tool called DIGO, D-I-I-G-O. It's on our website on the right-hand side. You click in there, and I think there's almost 7,000 studies in there. You can search anything you want. I've read every one of them, some of them many times. And we update that very, very regularly. So we blog all the time too.
I wonder if we can convince peers and others to convince the teachers to have a little bit
know what occurred.
It's
You know what? The evidence is really strong for that. I think it would be really cool to do it before a test. I think it'd be really cool to do it before a test. And definitely on days of testing, keep them away from the simple sugar. So if you got a kid that they're approaching in vitals or testing of any time, don't give them sugar. Give them protein in the morning with vegetables. Protein with vegetables. Don't give them sugar. Because they're going to get a high, they're not going to focus then, they're going to get a low, and they're really not going to be able to focus and think then. So stay away from the sugar in the morning. And what do we mostly eat in America? Sugar in the morning. And be keep creative. Have a piece of salmon in the morning for breakfast. Stevia, ooh, you can come to my yard, needs some. It's an herb. You can't kill the thing. It's great. It's a pretty unassuming plant. But it's 200 times stronger than sugar, and it does not affect insulin. You would use it just like you would peppermint or spearmint. The leaves, you pull them off and you would just smash it. Yeah. Put it in food. Put it in oatmeal. Oatmeal's a great breakfast. Steel cut oatmeal is really good. I'm out working in the yard. I'm going to pick off a few acres, chew on it. It's just that good. It's just that good. And again, you can't kill it. It's pretty good. Again, a lot of, I just think if God made it, He knew best. I'm going to try to follow Him. So, when you look at, artificial sweeteners is one example. Not much good about that. Not much good about that. It's a drug. It's a drug. So what God has blessed men with knowledge and He's blessed us with discoveries. So I'm very careful about what I say there, okay? But when God makes things, He makes it perfect. He makes it perfect. And usually when men come along, women usually come along and we mess it up. We usually do. So I try to stay with what God gave us. It's pretty cool stuff. It's pretty cool stuff. And I'm not gonna say when I go out and eat stevia or get echinacea and feverfew that all of a sudden I don't have the flu or cold or those kind of things. I got the shingles at 44. We always stress because my mom-in-law was there. But who can handle that? But I treated it naturally. I had 3 days where I really hurt. And my wife was going to diagnose it. That looks like shingles. No way. Question?
Why still cut over versus
Blue. Scotch, yeah, Scotch pretty much the same thing. It's the gluten issue. So that's why.
If children have sensitivity to several things, is it likely that they have sensitivity to more? Like, my kids have some sensitivity, but they're not gluten, they haven't tested positive.
Good issue. And that's why I say it's so important to have it tested. Because going gluten-free, that's a big undertaking for the whole family. And usually with whatever parents charged with cooking, to cook 2 meals, one for the family, one for the person that's gluten-free, that's not conducive to any success. So that's why I think it's so important to test. But yes, things do not exist in isolation. Some people are just going to genetically be sensitive to things, and others are going to be sensitive because of an unhealthy gut. And again, that starts before birth. And it starts with how was the child born? Was the mom given steroids? Was the child born early? Was mom given antibiotics prior to birth? Did the child have pneumonia? Did the child have chronic constipation? Early year infections, take a lot of antibiotics. What happened? Eat a lot of Twinkies and Ding Dongs. What happened? All of those things set the gut up wrong. So now, when somebody comes to my office that's overweight and they have metabolic syndrome, I go, guess what? We're going to do a stool test. They go, why? It's like, because if we want to positively change your metabolism, studies tell me we're going to change your gut. And we know what bacteria we need to change. They did a really interesting study. Has everybody heard of fecal transplants? Okay, yeah, it's becoming a big thing. It's kind of nasty to think about it. No liver transplants, fecal transplants. But they did this for people with ulcerative colitis, inflammatory bowel disease. And so what they did did is they did these fecal transplants from this group to this group, small group, and they found that, wow, there was a massive improvement in ulcerative colitis. I mean, some of them went into remission. Amazing. But they also noticed that, a fair number of them have gotten fat. So they were following them and they go, well, what do you do? You eat Twinkies and donuts? No. You exercising? Yeah, I feel great. Better than I've ever felt. So they went back and said, well, let's look at these people and see if there's any common link between the people that are getting fat and that got the fecal transplant and those that didn't. And they went back and looked and said, okay, let's match who got what from whom. The people that got the fecal transplant from those that were obese, those were the ones that got obese. So they then went and said, well, let's look at their bacterial balance. Let's do a stool culture, and let's look and see what the predominant bacteria are in them. And let's look at it and compare it to those people who they got that sample from. Almost identical. So here's are people that had ulcerative colitis, significant improvement, but they gained weight because their bacterial content changed. And so now everybody's all uproar about, wow, who knew? Well, you can do the same thing with a proper dose probiotic. Properly dosed probiotic. That's another great anti-inflammatory, by the way, and it's also good for flu prevention, is probiotic. If you got systemic inflammation, probiotic. But dose is right. And the bacterial population that you're inducing is very important. Some people will go out and just get lactate or lactobacillus. But if you take too much lactobacillus, you can get too much D-lactate, which is a neurotoxin. So you can create some problems. So you have to go with D-lactate-free probiotics for some of these people. So again, there's a lot of nuances to these. You can do some great things over the counter. But when people have big problems, seek somebody that, whether it's an herbalist, a nurse practitioner, a PA, a physician, seek somebody out that knows functional medicine. Again, it's not an advertisement for me. I have a passion for everybody for this. So just seek somebody out. Other questions? I'll try to think of any other caveats. Oh, breastfeeding. God made it that way. Do it. Babies do better. You actually expose their immune system that way. And God knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. Let's allow him to lead us. Well, good. I hope it's been helpful. I hope it's spurred you to look into some things. Again, I kept it general for a reason. But natural things can be very, very potent. They can be very, very beneficial. So, hope it's been helpful. Thank you all.
Dr. Goodyear, don't feel bad. I had shingles at age of 29 and 30. Yeah. Lots of stress, but that period of my life. But yes, don't feel bad. Exactly. Guys, thank you for coming. Once again, like I said, the whole purpose of the parent seminars is really to help you guys out, to give you guys information. I feel like we do a great job sometimes with the kids, but the parents need more information as well. Parents, and that was the whole goal of these parent seminars. We've got one more coming up.